To those who don't know me yet, I wanted to say hello. I'm Jessica Pitcher. I'm the Associate Director of Alumni Career Services here at Syracuse University. If you didn't know that Alumni Career Services exists, we do. We're housed within alumni engagement and annual giving. And long story short, we will support you in your career journey wherever you are, which is why we do these virtual sessions. I am just happy to host Dean Konkol, who, as you know, is the Dean of Hendricks Chapel. And we're really excited for the talk today of 5 steps to discovering your professional joy. What's ironic is that we talk about similar things today because I'm trying to talk to people one-on-one and in small groups about trying to find peace in what career decisions they're making. And then once you've made those decisions, Dean Konkol is hoping that you will find some joy after you have made those decisions. So I am going to throw things over to him and we will take it from there.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be with you. I'm going to do some screen sharing and we are going to buckle up and get off to the races here in 1 second. Okay. If there's one image that I want us to start with as we think about joy, it's this one here. And that is, of course, a thermostat. Not just any thermostat, but this is an old school thermostat. And one of the things I love to share about thermostats is the thermostat I have right here in Hendricks Chapel. Actually, I could probably turn my camera and show it to you. The funny thing about Hendricks Chapel is that when it was built in the late 1920s, there was all these little intricacies like many old historic buildings tend to have. And the thermostat for Hendricks Chapel is actually located right over there on that wall, about 10 feet away from my desk, which means for those of you that are familiar with Syracuse, you know that we have 4 different seasons within 24 hours. There's a number of different temperature changes. And so people are constantly asking me to turn the temperature up or to turn the temperature down. And as I think about this image, I think it's powerful. And it's the recognition that each and every one of us as leaders, as professionals, we are thermostats. A thermometer only takes the temperature, but a thermostat is about changing the conditions that offers an environment by which others can thrive. Like this picture in front of you, quite literally, it's about putting your hand on the dial and changing it ever so slightly to create the conditions so that all those around you can thrive. And I think that that's how we think about joy. Today, it's about putting our hands on the dials of our professional lives and turning them just a couple degrees towards joy. And as we think about joy, about how do we construct joy, the first thing that we do is we think about what are the barriers to joy. Here's one of our good favorite characters, Eeyore, right? Mr. Negativity. And I want to start off here by getting a little bit of participation. You will see the chat box in there. Let's think about some barriers to joy. What are different things that prevent you in your professional life from experiencing joy? Now, for those of you that work at Syracuse University, please don't write my name on there or don't write anyone else's names here. I am a confidential resource, but the other people on this call are not confidential resources. So be careful what you write. So we got difficult colleagues, time, negative loop thinking. Absolutely. Let's keep going. Unreasonable timeliness, barriers to experiencing joy, competing priorities, misalignment, volume, inefficient systems. Keep it going. Absolutely. Absolutely. Artificial stress. I love that. Anxiety, management, prejudice. Absolutely. Absolutely. There are countless barriers. And as a result of that, we really do reside oftentimes in professional environments that are drowning in negativity. Think about that metaphor I just gave to you before about air conditioning. Many of us are breathing in negativity all day long. I read a recent study that shared close to 70% of all conversation in the work environment is negative. Pay attention the next time you just listen to some colleagues speaking to each other. There's a 7 out of 10 chance that the conversation is negative. It's complaining about a person, complaining about the weather, complaining about a deadline, whatever it might be. we tend to be soaked in the oxygen of negativity. And therefore, it's up to us to think through, how do we be thermostats and not thermometers? In other words, how do we be models and not mirrors? And instead of mirroring the negativity around of us, how do we show a different way? It's kind of like, instead of being on a raft that just goes down the river in whatever way the popular current takes you, how do we find a different way? And to bring something positive and bring to something joyful. Now, to think about what joy means, I want to dig down in this word a little bit for a moment. Now, we'll go back to the chat here. When we think about the word joy, what I want to think about here is we define this word, but when you hear this word, how does it make you feel? Okay. When I say the word joy, how does that word make you feel? And please don't write joyful. That's cheating. All right. How does that word make you feel? Let's go for it. Sincere, lighter. Yeah. Yeah. Makes you smile. Absolutely. Okay. Motivated, fulfilled, calm. Yeah. Yeah. How about for those that are willing to share, when is a time most recently in your professional life where you experienced joy? And again, you can use your disclosure at whatever comfort level you want to. When is a time professionally that you experienced joy? Why don't we throw some of that in the chat, please? Yeah, helping others. Thanks, Tina. Yeah, oh gosh, this is great. This is great. This is great. Membership events at our last conference. Thanks, Diane. Making someone else smile, Carrie Ann. That's great. I love it. Melinda, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. What's so fascinating, maybe you're experiencing what I'm experiencing right now, just even reading the chat is making me feel better about my day. You notice that? There's something really exciting. We're experiencing it right now. A little something I want to talk about in terms of, again, being a thermostat, not a thermometer. Many of us in our professional lives have heard about the attitude is contagious phrase. It is actually physiologically true. Our friends in neuroscience would tell us about mirror neurons, meaning that how we show up, our body language, our verbal language, the ways in which we go about actually does change the chemistry in the people's brains around us. Now, for some of you, that might be the scariest thing you've heard all day. It is true. Mirror neurons, attitude is actually contagious. And we're showing it right now. I can't help but smile as I read the chat right now and thinking about the positive difference that you're all making in your work environment. So joy is reciprocal and it builds and it's cycle. That's wonderful. But I think what's important is that oftentimes when we think about joy, we think about this, we think about moments, right? We think about this here. And I want to show that joy is more than just a moment. Joy is a movement. And sometimes when we think about joy, what we're really thinking about is happiness. And I want to dig down just for a moment here, and you'll see here on our slide is that I'll give you an example. I live here in Syracuse, and not a day goes by where someone doesn't have something negative to say about the weather, right? Now, let me tell you about, I think right outside today, I think it's like 72 degrees. It's sunny. It's really quite spectacular. And I'm convinced someone at some point today is going to complain that it's just so darn sunny outside, right? Like, I think about conferences, right? I was at this conference recently and I heard this presenter speak. They were the first presentation of the day. And the first 5 minutes was, oh boy, I'm the first presenter of the day. Then the next presenter was, oh boy, I'm the presenter right before lunch. This is terrible. Then the next presenter gets up and says, wow, I'm the first presenter right after lunch. Then the next presenter, oh, I'm the last presentation of the day. Like everyone was just started with negativity and thinking that joy and happiness is dependent upon external conditions. Again, remember, thermostat versus thermometer. I'm convinced that happiness is temporary. It often comes from external factors and is therefore intricately dependent upon the environment in which we find ourselves. Whereas joy is something deeper. Joy is a condition. It's more consistent. I would argue that it has more to do with internal and it is dependent upon our mindset. Therefore, what we can find is that people can experience joy even in the midst of challenges. It's tough to be happy in the midst of challenges, but one can still be joyful even in the midst of challenges. Now, I'm going to try to stay joyful as I experiment with our technology. I'm going to show a little bit of an example of how to be joyful even in the midst of challenges. I'm going to unshare screen and I'm going to attempt to show a video. One moment, please.
Sex. Did you say that? You are a monk, remember? I've sometimes said to him, the cameras are on us.
Honestly, the energy between them is 8-year-old boy.
You are mischievous. What is the purpose of it? Just enjoy our friendship and talk about joy.
I don't think you could find two people on the planet who are more different than the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. One grew up in absolute poverty. The other grew up in a 1,000-room palace.
Unfortunately, that person is Christian. Unfortunately, he's a Buddhist. There's a lot of shared background. Both of them have deep history of struggle against authoritarian systems.
The Tibetan people are being exterminated. Their culture and religion are being stamped out.
Age 24, I lost my own country.
Amid tear gas and police dogs, Desmond Tutu led a people against apartheid.
When people decide to be free, absolutely nothing is going to stop them from becoming free. You can overcome the most horrendous circumstances and emerge on the other side, not broken.
Right.
When you say you are pursuing happiness, you are not going to find it.
Happiness isn't just something that feels good.
Is it?
Happy people, they're physically healthier. They have stronger immune systems.
Sounds great. It was really helpful because
Ultimate source of
he wasn't
happy life
quoting them.
inside, not
So
outside.
I did talk to him this morning, and so I wasn't sure what you were going to tell me. I'm like, oh, okay.
It really becomes something quite special.
Yes.
I think at time of my death,
That'd
I
be
will-
great. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much. So we should just wait and then it'll come and then I'll accept it on the.
Okay, we're back to shared screen. Is that right? Okay. I think that seeing the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu helps us to recognize that joy and crisis can dwell together. And we'll talk about this here a little bit later on in our time together. But one of the things that I would invite us to think about when we're experiencing joy in our professional lives is replace the word but with and. That all these things can dwell together, that we can be living in a world with incredible challenges, both local and global, and we can experience joy. And in many ways, like the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu modeled for us, joy is oftentimes one of the greatest forms of resistance to crisis, and that we fill our spaces with hope and with passion and energy. And it is not disrespectful to the pain for us to experience joy, but it's a response to the pain of our world to experience joy. And I can share with you on a very deep personal level. In my work as a minister, I have many Saturdays where there's a funeral at 11 o'clock and then there's a wedding at 2 p.m. And many of my Saturdays are like that. And oftentimes it's how do you be present and serve with integrity at both of those experiences, recognizing that those who are asking me to preside at their wedding don't need someone who's just still struggling with the funeral. And someone who's asked me to preside at their funeral doesn't need someone who's looking forward to the wedding. But the reality is that at every single moment, at every single day, as you and I are on this call right now here, someone around the world is experiencing the worst moment of their life. Someone somewhere is experiencing the single worst moment of their life. And someone somewhere else is experiencing the greatest moment of their life. And that's happening right now. And it's always happening every single second and every minute and every hour of every day. And we live in the midst of that and have a choice to make about how it is we want to show up in the world. And I would argue we show up with joy and with empathy and with compassion. And that's how we dial the temperature of our world towards something more fulfilling and something more life-giving. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some steps, and I'll make sure we have some opportunity for dialogue here. 5 steps are always imperfect. This is by no means some magic potion. Just going to give you some thoughts that I've been reflecting on over the years and get your response. And hopefully we'll all be a little bit better off by the end of this call than we were at the beginning. Here's the first one. Stop hoping for a better past. I love that phrase. To be clear, it's not mine. I don't know where I got it from, but I'm sure I got it from someone. I am not smart enough to come up with that wonderful quote. Stop hoping for a better past. So many of us, including me, watched Back to the Future countless times, and we've ever since been praying for the holy time machine to show up and say, can I please go back to last Tuesday so I can undo that really stupid thing that I did? Because wow, I wish I wouldn't have done that. I don't know about you, I have yet to receive that holy time machine. And I have found that hoping for a better past has generally been a really big waste of time. We can learn from our past, but we can't change it. And what I want to do one more time is to show one of my favorite videos. And you're wondering, why is he showing Stephen Colbert and Anderson Cooper? And I'm going to show you. These two had this absolutely wonderful interview a couple years ago where they talk about how they process their grief. Now, I'll set it up for you for a moment. Anderson Cooper is interviewing Stephen Colbert, and I'm going to show you this clip here in a second. Anderson Cooper had just recently lost his mother. And as Anderson Cooper is asking Stephen Colbert some questions about grief, you'll notice Anderson Cooper on the left, he starts breaking down a little bit. Now, Stephen Colbert had experienced significant tragedy as a young person. He lost his father and he lost some of his brothers in a tragic accident. Stephen Colbert is a devout Catholic, and he talks about how he processes his grief and how he's able to find meaning and even gratitude in the midst of grief. And it's an incredibly powerful exchange between two people that you might not expect to have a powerful exchange about grief and loss and suffering. So I'm going to try once again to go back to the video. Give me one moment, please. Can we see the Stephen Colbert on there right now? Thumbs up? Yep. Okay. Thank you.
And then, as Gandalf says, so do all people who are in such times.
You told an interviewer that you have learned to, in your words, love the thing that I most wish had not happened.
I remember.
You went on to say, what punishments of God are not gifts? Do you really believe that?
Yes. It's a gift to exist. It's a gift to exist. And with existence comes suffering. There's no escaping that. And I guess I'm either a Catholic or a Buddhist when I say those things, because I've heard those from both traditions. But I didn't learn it that I was grateful for the thing I most wish hadn't happened, is that I realized it. Is that, and it's an oddly guilty feeling.
It doesn't mean you.
I don't want it to have happened. I want it to not have happened.
Right.
But if you are grateful for your life, which I think is a positive thing to do, not everybody is,
Right.
and I'm not always, but it's the most positive thing to do, then you have to be grateful for all of it. You can't pick and choose what you're grateful for. And then, so what do you get from loss? You get awareness of other people's loss.
Well, that's true. Empathy.
Which allows you to connect with that other person,
Right.
which allows you to love more deeply and to understand what it's like to be a human being, if it's true that all humans suffer. And so at a young age, I suffered something so that by the time I was in serious relationships in my life with friends or with my wife or with my children, is that I have some understanding that everybody is suffering. And however imperfectly, acknowledge their suffering and to connect with them and to love them in a deep way that not only accepts that all of us suffer, but also then makes you grateful for the fact that you have suffered so that you can know that about other people. And that's what I mean. It's about the fullness of your humanity. What's the point of being here and being human if you can't be the most human you can be? I'm not saying best, because you're going to be a bad person and a most human. I want to be the most human I can be. And that involves acknowledging and ultimately being grateful for the things that I wish didn't happen because they gave me a gift.
Well, one of the things my mom
Yeah. Okay. I think that's so powerful. And I love the way that Stephen Colbert articulates this, that it's not that you wanted it to happen. By no means do we want bad things to happen for our life. And to be clear, I'm not sure if everything happens for a reason or if it's a part of some bigger plan. I don't know that. I have yet to have that conversation with the higher power. But what I do believe is that suffering provides us with an opportunity, and again, to hold these things together. That part of what was shown on that screen was this ability for these two men to connect with one another. And one could argue that's a real experience of joy. That here's Anderson Cooper, who's breaking down emotionally on camera, and Stephen Colbert, who also knows what it's like to suffer, is able to connect with him because he knows. He's able to reach out to him, and together they're able to be the most human that they can be. And I love that line. Maybe it's not always about being the best human we can be, but it's about being the most human we can be. And part of being most human is being able to connect with one another in terms of our suffering and in terms of our grief. And I can see, thank you, Melinda, for your comments. It really is a powerful video. It's one that I show often, and candidly, it's one that I like to show to our young men on this campus. I think it's a great example of being able to open up as men as well, and to counteract some of the voices and messages we get about what it means to be most masculine. And I think that these two show us a bit of what that looks like. So again, step one, stop hoping for a better past. Here's step two. Choose to be kind anyway. And I think that that's the most important part is comma, anyway. My grandmother gave me a great line. She was the sweetest person ever. And when someone difficult in her life, instead of calling them a jerk or well, you can imagine, right? Yeah. She used to call them grace builders. I still use that line to this day. Oh, that person's a grace builder. What it means is that person builds my capacity to give grace. What a great, again, I'm from Wisconsin, the global capital of passive aggressive communication. So that's where that comes from. Grace building. The power of kindness. There is nothing stronger than kindness. And I think that one of the ways that we experience joy in our lives is the choice to be kind. I'll give you another little story. Where I used to work prior to Syracuse is this wonderful school in Minnesota called Gustavus Adolphus College. And Gustavus Adolphus College had this legendary tennis coach named Steve Wilkinson. Steve Wilkinson is now the leading most winningest coach in NCAA history. And he built this whole philosophy around tennis and built this camp called Tennis and Life, where thousands of young people flock to central Minnesota to attend Tennis and Life camp at Gustavus Adolphus College. And he wraps around all of these messages around the game. And one of them is, you can't control what people serve to you, but you can control what you return. And I love that. And the whole camp is around these lessons. He actually, on the first day, he takes everyone's racket and draws a smiley face, 2 eyes and a smile on their racket, so that regardless of how your match is going, you've got a smile staring right back at you on that racket. And thousands and thousands and thousands of people have attended this camp, yours truly. And I love that metaphor. You can't control what people serve to you, but you can control what you return. And there is strength in kindness. Oftentimes in our world, people mistake kindness for weakness. That is fundamentally untrue. Never underestimate the strength of kindness. And I do not remember the last time I regretted being kind. I remember many, many, many times when I've regretted being short or cruel or whatever, but never have I regretted being kind. It's actually for all of us that love Syracuse University, one of the best commencement speeches known around the country. Our very own George Saunders, this was probably 10, 15 years ago at the College of Arts and Sciences, gave a wonderful speech basically about kindness. I highly recommend you look it up. It's a great, great, great speech. I can't remember the exact date on it at this time, but George Saunders, spectacular speech. So again, step number 2, choose to be kind anyway. So this image is important to me. This is about replacing but with and. Now, if you look at this image, and I love these old school gumball machines, right? What's better than that? I think about the colors of the different gumballs representing all the different things that we experience on a given day. Things that are happy, things that are sad, things that are wonderful, things that are terrible, people that are kind, people that are cruel, communities that are divided, communities that are united. It's all there, right? Every one of those colors on those gumballs represent life. And what I often experience is that people will come to my office and they'll tell me about a struggle that they're having. And then sooner or later, they'll use the word but. They'll say, I'm really struggling with this, but I know I should be thankful. I get to come to Syracuse. And I said, there's no but. It's and. It's and. That we can have joy when we stop apologizing for whatever it is that we're feeling, and we can hold all those things together. It's about the and, not the but. I've actually tried to give up the word but for this year, and I have found it to be incredibly helpful. On a side note, for those of you that have been in the building here at Hendricks Chapel, there's something really, 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 really fun. That if you go upstairs into our main sanctuary, and if you were to stand on the main stage looking out at the congregation, and you look at the text that circles the rim of the chapel, if you're standing on that stage, if you look immediately to your right, there is an ampersand, the symbol for and. And if you look immediately to your left, there is also an ampersand. So when you stand at the center of the stage of Hendricks Chapel looking outward, you literally physically stand in between the ants. I think that's really cool. And it shows that we're able to hold all these things together, division and unity, happiness and sadness, joy and despair. And that glass container that you see in front of you that hold all the gumballs, that is the totality of our life experience. And that we can exist with the fullness of our humanity. So the next time we want to acknowledge a struggle, it doesn't have to be but. It doesn't have to be, yeah, I'm having a tough day, but I know I should be thankful. I've got a great job. I've got a great family. There's no but. It's and. And by holding all those things together, that allows us, I believe, to have a better perception and expectations about what real life actually looks like. Now, trust me, I experience this all the time. I have students that come in here, they got a B+ in class, and they're convinced that this is the end of their existence. And trust me, there's a part of me that just wants to grab them by the shoulders and say, you're going to make it. I promise you, you know, or it's that person that, you know, has been dating this very special someone for about 2.5 weeks, and they're convinced that that's like the one, and then they break up. Trust me, there's a part that wants to minimize it sometimes, but that's their struggle in that moment. And we honor that struggle. And you can say, yes, what you're going through is incredibly painful, and you're at Syracuse University and your future looks great. And all those things can be held as one. And I think that that's pretty important to do. When it comes to joy, this one's important for me. It's about being a role model, not a role mirror. Being a role model and not a role mirror. This one's incredibly important to me this year as I think about our role here at Hendricks Chapel. And I think about all the struggles around our campus and around our world. And oftentimes how the chapel is like the nerve that's exposed to the pain. One of the commitments that we make is, how do we model the type of world we want to live in and not mirror the world that we do live in? Model, not mirror. Thermostat, not a thermometer. And we'll talk about it in a couple slides from now, but taking a deep breath and asking ourselves, what if everyone else were to copy exactly how I'm behaving? What kind of world would we be living in? For those of you that are parents, you'll know what this is like when our kids start picking up our habits, whether we like it or not. That can be kind of scary, right? You think, oh my gosh, that thing's going to live another generation. Wow. It's the power of habits. I always try to give that book recommendation out here during one of my conversations. Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habit, an extraordinary book about how we lead by example, recognizing that 40% of what we do each and every day is a product of a habit. And it's important for us to think about those habits and to ask ourselves, how is that working for you? Because habits live longer than we do. I think about my 13-year-old and my 11-year-old. My habits are going to live on. Some of them are going to live on through them long after I'm gone. The power of habit. And part of the way we experience joy professionally is modeling for others how we're supposed to treat others. Another parenting story. I remember when this hit me, the first time Kristen and I realized that our firstborn child, even though there were 7 billion people on the planet, that child was learning about human behavior and human relationships through my wife and I. Pretty remarkable. And we carry that responsibility, and I'm convinced in our professional lives, when we're role models and not role mirrors, and when we're thermostats and not thermometers, that creates that mirror neuron effect, and it creates positive change. Not just for a moment, but for a movement. And we'll get into more of that here in a moment too. Be a role model, not a role mirror. And here's one of my favorites. Call people in instead of calling people out. When I think about the divisions of society what we hear a great deal is about calling people out. I've heard people say like, well, I just want you to give me the brutal truth. And I say, it doesn't have to be brutal, actually. You know, it doesn't have to be brutal. Or in other words, I would like you to imagine, when's the last time any of us had our minds changed as a direct result of someone yelling at us, right? I can't remember. Calling people in rather than calling people out. Instead of pointing a finger at somebody, it's about waving people in. And one of the ways I think we experience joy is by calling people in, welcoming people into the conversation, especially those by whom we disagree. Oftentimes we think about people we disagree with kind of like we think about trash, and we just want to throw it out. What I like about that metaphor is you never actually throw anything out. We only throw it out of sight. It's never actually gone. It's the same with people. They're there. So why not call people into a conversation, into a relationship where we can engage with curiosity rather than judgment, where we can listen to understand instead of respond. I think about a story from me. When I was my first year of seminary, I had a classmate named Sean Ford. Sean Ford, African-American student, me, small town white guy from Wisconsin. And we were having this conversation about race and about discrimination. And I said something in that class that he just disagreed with. Now, Sean had a decision to make. He could have justifiably stood up in the midst of that entire class of people and really embarrassed me, saying, here's this small town kid from Wisconsin who doesn't know any better, and now I'm going to set him straight. He could have done that, and he would have been justified. But what Sean did instead was he invited me to have a conversation after class, and we had a cup of coffee, and he shared with me about his experience as a Black man in America. And I learned something. And Sean became one of my best friends. He ended up presiding at my wedding, and to this day, we're in touch. Now, if Sean had called me out, I probably would have got defensive, and I probably would have refused to talk to him for a long while. But instead, he called me in. I learned something. Sean invested in me, and I'm better off for it. So I think that there's a way to call people in, and that's where joy comes. Instead of calling out, we call in. So here's the full list. And what we'll do is we'll take some questions here in a moment here, but I wanted people to get the full sense here of the 5. And there's many more, of course. But what I find is that these 5 are in many ways like turning the dial of joy in our professional lives, regardless of the environment, regardless of what's happening externally. If we hold on to these, we can create joy in our professional experiences. Stop hoping for a better past. Choose to be kind anyway. Replace but with and. Be a role model, not a role mirror. And then call people in instead of calling people out. And what that allows us to do is to create alignment. And that's what I think joy is ultimately about. Think about the last time you were driving your car and you could tell that your tires were not aligned, right? You all know that feeling where you're driving down the road where you can take your hands off the wheel and your car is just going to go right on into the ditch. Life is like that. When your life is not aligned, when who you are is not aligned with what you do, that's called disalignment. And it's a struggle just to keep going straight. A struggle. Many of you know what that feels like. Joy is when who you are and what you do becomes aligned. Where you can even take your hands off the steering wheel for a couple moments and you're still on your way. I think that's where joy comes from, is that sense of alignment. And it comes with our actions, our attitudes, and also, I would say, for the bigger picture, our discernment. In addition to being the dean of Hendricks Chapel, I'm also a Lutheran minister, and part of my own Lutheran tradition is vocational discernment. So when we think about joy, I would say it's both micro and macro. Micro is how we treat people, how we show up to work, but then there's that macro level about how it is that we align who we are with what we do. In other ways, I fundamentally believe that each and every person has a calling in their life, a calling, a sacred calling, where you think about on the one side of this picture, think about it being in one hand, your joys, your gifts, your passions, the things that give you energy and excitement and enthusiasm, that's in one hand. And in the other hand is what is it that the world is yearning to receive from you? And I'm convinced it has to be both. It's like the student that comes to me and is wondering what they want to do with their lives. And they say, I just want to do something that makes me happy. And I like to remind them, but what if the world doesn't revolve around your happiness? What if it's also about other people? But the other side is true. It can't just be about other people. It can't just be about what do other people need from you. I'm convinced that both of these things have to come together. I'm convinced of it. Your greatest joys, your gifts, your passion, and the emerging needs of the world. And where those two things come together, that's where you find your calling. And these are dynamic, right? Your joys, your passions, and that which brings you energy undoubtedly changes over time. 20 years ago, what got me really excited was Nintendo, right? Video game, I've changed a little bit since then, right? So our joys, our gifts, and our passions change over time. And the needs of the world change over time. So as you look at this diagram in front of you, I would share that this is like a muscle that you need to exercise on a daily basis to invite yourself to discern, where is it that I'm meant to be? Where do I match my joys, gifts, and passions with that which the world is yearning to receive from me? And that's why you'll see on the right side of your screen, when people talk about work-life balance, that phrase, it's all life. When you're at work, that's life. So this idea of work-life balance, I'm convinced, is a complete misnomer because everything you experience is life. Everything is life. So instead of thinking about how do I balance work and life, it's recognizing that life is the umbrella under which everything else is a part of. So how do we align your work with your life, like the tires of the car, to ensure that who you are and what you do and where you are and whom you are with is aligned? And part of that comes through that discernment of that diagram that you see right in front of you, aligning who you are with what you do. Here's one of my favorite exercises, then we'll take some questions. This is something I do with my students. I just think this is just a fun thing to do. Oftentimes, we think about joy as knocking off things off our to-do list. And the to-do list comes from the ways in which we conceive of time. You'll see in the upper right-hand side of the screen, chronos. Chronos is what the ancient Greeks used to describe time, like tick and tock of the clock. That's like the etymology of chronology, chronos. And that's why many of us have something like the screen in front of us. We've got this to-do list, and we feel this great satisfaction when we knock things off. Oh, mow the yard, got it, I feel great. I want to invite us into something deeper. The Greeks didn't just think of time as chronos, they also thought of time as kairos. You'll see on the top right-hand side here. Kairos was looking at time like opportunity. Not just the tick and tock of the clock, but kairos is about opportunity. And as a result of that, what I always invite our students to do is don't write out a to-do list, but first write out a to-be list. A to-be list. Write out 5 things that says, who must I be today? Perhaps it can say, I'm going to be energetic. I'm going to be kind. I'm going to be strong. I'm going to be strategic. And I invite them to write it out and then place it in their suits. And I actually got mine right in front of me right here just to prove it. I always keep it right here. 5 things that you write out a to-be list. And what that does, it allows you to live with a sense of intention, a to-be list. And that provides us with the opportunity to see that joy is not about waiting for the rain to stop, but it's about learning to dance in the rain. That joy comes from being intentional, putting out your to-be list and saying, here's who I'm called to be today. And you look at it over and over again, and regardless of what the temperature is, it's saying, this is how I choose to show up in the world. This is who I choose to be. I want to make some time for questions. What I would do, there's a great video. This is Kiala. She's a great artist. Jess, maybe if you could throw that in the chat for me. I love this. Please take a look. The video is basically, she was in The Greatest Showman with Hugh Jackson. And there's this wonderful video where they're going through the rehearsal to get the film greenlit. And she's very scared. And the video shows her just coming out of her skin and blasting this song. And it is so absolutely wonderful. But I wanted to make sure that we took some time for questions. So when I think about what joy looks like and sounds like and feels like, it's the video. And maybe that's just a little teaser for you to go and to see that. And when I think about that video, it takes us back to this, and then we'll take some questions here for the next 10 minutes, this is about hope. And this is about joy. What I love about this picture in front of you is it's a reminder that each and every one of us can bring joy into our existence. And what do I mean by that? If I were to take a poll, and I won't do it, even though we got chat, I'm kind of curious, is what you all set your homes to. If someone feels so brave to throw it up there, go for it. I'll tell you, I like 70. So I'm going to start. I'm going to put a 70 on there. All right, Belinda, thanks for jumping in. That's great. So we're going to get some temperatures on there here. Oh my God. Well, this is really fascinating, by the way. This is great. So I guarantee that, let's just see, I see a bunch of 68s in there, which I guarantee if one of you 68-degree people, that if I snuck into your house this afternoon, and if I changed it from 68 to 70, I guarantee you would notice without even looking at your thermostat. You would look around and say, it just feels a little warm in here. I know it. If you are normally at 68 and I snuck in and changed it to 70, you would notice. And that to me is hope. That in the midst of all that's going on in this world, all you got to do is like this image that you see in front of you. All you got to do is change it towards joy, just 1 or 2 degrees. That's it. Just a slight move towards joy. And the impact that will have on your own life, the impact that will have on those around you, I'm utterly convinced that it makes an incredibly positive difference. And I've listed 5 steps that I think helps you to turn that dial just a little bit towards joy in your professional life. And I'm convinced that by doing so, it allows that to spread. So here's the last thought. Here at Hendricks Chapel, we're often called the spiritual heart of Syracuse University. And I love that metaphor. And one of the things I tell our team is that to be a spiritual heart, you have to be a beating heart. And a beating heart has veins and it has arteries that spread throughout the body. For us, those veins and those arteries are the life that is Syracuse University. So for us at Hendricks Chapel to do our job well, we are a spiritual thermostat that is a beating heart that spreads life throughout the body of Syracuse University. And I'm convinced that each and every one of you, in your own way, in your own system, in whatever context you find yourselves in, that you too can turn up that dial. You can be a thermostat and not a thermometer and bring some joy to your life, to bring some joy to your world. So I am going to unshare the screen, and I think people can type in some questions, or you can ask them verbally, or you can watch that Kiala video that got sent to you. I'll pause there. All right, just would you mind giving some examples of to-be list items and related to-do list items? Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Jessica. So when I think about to-do list, like you know, yours is there. It's like, I need to do the laundry or something. I say suspend those things first. Let's go with that example. Let's say on your to-do list, it says, I got to do the laundry today. My question would be, how are you going to do the laundry? Not just, I'm going to pick it up and then do this. But my question is, what's the mindset that you're going to bring to that? Now, if that seems ridiculous, I'll give you one example from my own faith tradition. As I mentioned, being a Lutheran, one of the great writings of Martin Luther is he actually talked about in his monastery that one of the people that most radiated joy was the dishwasher in his monastery, because the dishwasher did that work by singing and with a smile and did it to the best of his ability. So I would imagine that if that dishwasher in Martin Luther's monastery had a to-be list, it was probably be joyful or be excellent, be passionate, whatever it is. So the to-do list might have been, I got to do the dishes, but the to-be list was, I want to be joyful, passionate, and energized. So the to-be list comes first, I think. That before we get to any to-do lists, we write out our to-be list, because the to-be list is like lenses. They're like these. They're like frames that help us to approach that to-do list. Even if it's doing the laundry, we're going to do it with excellence, and we're going to do it with joy, and we're going to feel good about it. So that's what I think about why the to-be list comes first, because that serves as the frame by which we engage the to-do list. Thanks, Jessica. Thoughts, questions? Yeah. Yeah, Caitlin, I think be productive should be disallowed from the to-be list. Yeah, that's a good one. Well, it's your list. Looks like someone wrote be silent on their to-be list, and that's what we're encountering. That's great. Be reflective, be silent. That's good. All right, we'll give it another minute. Oh, Tina, how do you remember to use the 5 steps the moment you need them? Yeah, that's a great one. So for me, because I'm forced to wear suits all day, I just I just put it right here, and I just have to write them out. So I put it on both sides, and so I do this every day, and I find 2 things. Number one, the process of actually writing it out is really helpful cognitively. That's why it's not like on my phone or something like that. I think like just actually having this physical note card that I have to write out and put in my jacket pocket every day, and taking those couple minutes to be intentional, I think it sits in my heart and mind just at a different level. And I find, especially when I know I'm about to encounter something or someone rather challenging, that's a great time to look at that list a couple times before I go into that meeting. And it helps me to be reminded of, how do I want to show up? Because I can't control what that person or that situation serves to me, but I can control what I return. So that's where I like the note card. Is something I look at over and over and over again. That's the first thing. I'm going to give you what I actually write on the other side of the card. Number one is the to-be list. The other is what I call impact intentions. And impact intentions is inspired by Maya Angelou, who said, people don't always remember what you say. They don't always remember what you do, but they do tend to remember how you make them feel. So on the other side of my note card, I always write right here, how do I want others to feel after they've been around me? And then I write it out. And I'm happy to just even read it to you. You know, today I wrote out, I want people to feel valued. I want people to feel motivated. I want people to feel secure. I want people to feel energized, and I want people to feel brave. So that was my 5 things that I wrote out today on my card. And tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow will be different because tomorrow's a different day. Now, one of my regrets is that I ripped them up at the end of the day, and I kind of wish I've kept them over the years to see how, but I like ripping them up at the end of the day because it's my own way to give myself grace, because I do fall short of these every day. And but anyway, part 1 is the to-be list. The other side is, how do I want other people to feel after they've been around me? And then the bigger picture is around alignment. Linda, I see yours. Part of that is like a larger conversation around that slide around who am I and what is the world yearning from me? And it's basically exercises with conversation partners around bigger picture, around career and around long-term goals. Where do you see yourself in a year, 5 years, 10 years? And how do you get there? So again, I think that discernment is on a macro level in terms of our career goals, and also on a micro level, meaning how am I going to show up? How am I going to show up today? I see we're at 1 minute left. I know that it's my contact information is always easy to find, and I will just maybe just even type it in there at some point, but I'll put my email in there to everyone here, and just want to appreciate everyone's time. I just put in my email. Time is precious. You're all really busy people, and I really appreciate the honor of your attention and your support of the university. If you hear anything, don't ever hesitate to reach out, and it's great to be with you. We're at 2:00. So Jessica, I'll turn it back to you.
So I'll just do the official thank you before everybody hops off. This is not a quantifiable statement, but I will say that I feel better after listening to the things that you've said today. I know that now that it has to come with some follow-up and some intentionality, but the feeling better part feels pretty good right now. So thank you. And I'm sure the others listening in feel the same sentiment.